folks. We've got pretty short agenda here tonight, I believe. What did I do with that? Yeah. All we have is the work session and the executive session. So let's get started if we can.
All right. Do you want to do a roll call, Mayor?
What's
Or I
that?
guess you want,
Oh, I
do we
guess we
need
do
to do
roll call
one?
for.
Probably good, yeah, good
Okay.
practice, yeah,
Jeff, would you take roll call?
certainly,
We'll fall out of practice if we don't do it every week.
that's right. Just to set for, just for the minutes, Counselor Mayne,
Present by video.
thank you, Counselor Smallwood,
Here.
Counselor Sheldon,
Here.
Counselor Ramsayer,
Here.
Counselor Hanley,
Here.
Counselor Hoganson,
Here.
Mayor Walker.
Here. Very good.
all right. Thank you, Mayor and Council. So we have, excuse me, a council goal that was adopted for this biennium to continue to implement a traffic safety and speed enforcement program, including deployment of technology that will assist with enforcement and gathering accurate speed data in areas of concern within the city. And staff has been working sort of on and off on some of the components of this project over the last, frankly, couple years for some pieces of it, but really with the council goal that was adopted about 11 months ago, we reprioritized and have been doing some more heavy lifting on some of these topics. The staff report's broken into 3 different sections, and I'd like to kind of take it step by step so that we can get some clear direction on each item as we move forward. But just to kind of summarize what we'll be talking about this evening, 3 primary components. The first is the rapid flashing, there's another R in there, but that's okay. RRFB, the flashing beacons for crosswalks in the downtown area.
I think it's red.
Rectangular.
Rectangular, someone knew the R.
I was guessing. I was guessing.
The second component is driver feedback signs. You've seen those on Highway 211 near DeBarco. It shows, what the posted speed is and how fast you're actually going. So talking about some placement of those on the east and west entry points of downtown Sandy.
And for the record, that was about 4 years.
Several years in the making. And then the third component is camera technology at key intersections for speed and red light running violations. And when we get to that third component, we do have Heidi, I forget your last name, I apologize.
Traverso.
Heidi Traverso
Yeah.
from Novoa Global. Her firm did the speed study that was associated with some of those red light running and photo radar components. So Heidi's here tonight to answer questions about that sort of program and the data that we have and implementation and things like that. But to get us started, I will invite AJ up here. And we will begin with the flashing beacons at key crosswalks in downtown Sandy. So we have some backstory. I guess I should start with that. As you know, Highway 26 is managed by ODOT. So ODOT has particular rules and regulations around any sort of additional signage or infrastructure that you put in their jurisdiction along the highway. And so after that pedestrian that was struck in front of the Action Center about 1.5 years ago, we started working with ODOT on putting an application together for some flashing crosswalk signage. That intersection sort of kicked off the research that we were doing, but certainly we have other intersections or other crosswalks in downtown that need some improvement as well. And so AJ and his team put together an application for ODOT to install these flashing beacons at that crosswalk in front of the Sandy Action Center and the crosswalk on Proctor and Strauss, kind of by the old beer den.
That's a good one too.
Part of ODOT's process is that if there's already, and I'll let you fill in the blanks here in just a moment, but if there's already signage for a crosswalk in place, then you don't have to do a traffic study and any other sort of homework, so to speak. You can utilize the existing signage, upgrade those signs, and install the crosswalks. So we focused on the 2 crosswalks that were kind of right in the middle of the downtown core, recognizing that you have a crosswalk at Bluff, you have a crosswalk at Tenite. Where's like that middle road that has the middle of the road that has signage already? So that's how we got these 2 crosswalks in particular identified. ODOT has since approved that application with some modifications. Some of those modifications come with a cost. Maybe I'll just pause here and let you kind of take it over since you ran that part of the project.
So we took a look at these signs Yeah, no problem. Took a look at the signs that existed in Sandy in these two locations, and the signs themselves have everything that we need to slap some beacons on there, push a button at the bottom, we're good to go. ODOT took a look at it and they're way more expert in the ADA side of things, so there was a few considerations that we needed to adjust to actually make this work out. Unfortunately, one of them was the pole size, and then the other one's the pole location. So because of the spot that the poles are in currently, there is not a good spot for people who are vision impaired to find that button and push it. So we're actually gonna have to move some things around to make that work out. And so that takes what we were expecting to be a roughly $15,000 project, which makes it closer to 60.
65?
Yep. So we've got to remove some panels on those crosswalks, relay some things, reset the poles, make some other adjustments, but
And that's the engineer's estimate.
Yeah.
We'll certainly, look for ways to reduce that cost as much as possible.
Can you kind of clarify though, what I thought this would be, these things would be like what's up at the football field?
Mhm.
Standalone kind of things. It sounds like you're gonna be putting them on a traffic signal that's already
oh,
there.
not on traffic signal, but like the crossings that we've picked for like at the Action Center, you can picture all the signs that are there with the crosswalk currently. All those signs are exactly what we need to put that beacon on, but we're gonna have to move the pole now as well.
You're gonna have to what?
Move the pole that they're mounted to as well, which
Aren't those just like, what do you call those? What are those signs?
it's the post itself is very simple, but it has to be traffic rated. So if a car hits it, it brakes properly and does not smash down onto a car or onto a random pedestrian. But it also requires some movement so that we can make basically a landing spot so that somebody can find the crosswalk button if they are visually impaired. That was the main comment from ODOT regarding the location.
Let me just kind of shortcut that a little bit.
Yeah.
What I understood was that the two ones at the football field cost like $5,000 or $6,000 to install. So all of a sudden I'm kind of going, wait a minute, 65,000, how did we get to that? Why can't we just use what we use there? They have the buttons, I assume they're. So that's kind of where I'm confused about how we got from one to.
Because this is on Highway 26, we have a different level of standards that we have to meet. And so there is.
Oh, the
more-
ODOT inflation factor?
Yeah,
You could call it that. Yeah.
yeah.
That's where sidewalk there to Vista Loop took 10 years and cost
Mhm.
$10 million or whatever the heck it cost. Okay.
So
So is there any workaround to that? That inflation factor or?
I haven't found one. We will get bids and see what work we can do in-house and keep things as cost effective as possible. But all we have at this point is an engineer's estimate to kind of give you guys an idea of what this will cost to
I
install.
was gonna suggest Sandy bypass, but that might.
It's a little bit more expensive, I think.
we certainly don't want to spend $65,000 and we will do everything to not spend 65,000, but we have an estimate. We'll be transparent about that estimate.
We need to do something.
Well, and is this 65K per or 65 total?
That's a
That's
total project.
For the four,
Yeah.
the four
So that's-
crossings.
Two crossings, 4 lines. right?
Exactly, yes.
Okay.
correct.
And the other question, somebody else have a question?
I was just gonna say, I think it's four, we should think of it as four crossings because they're not always aligned,
But it's one crossing on Proctor and one crossing on Pioneer.
It's just 2
We're not
crossings.
doing the purple and the green?
Well, that's kind of what I was gonna
That's
ask.
my next question for you. So green is what's been approved by ODOT. Purple is the other crosswalks that are already signed that we could use the same application process and expect a similar outcome from ODOT, assuming that they haven't changed their
So
approval
basically
criteria.
every 2 crosswalks would be roughly $65,000.
Hard,
There is, if we were to put it all into one package, there is some economy of scale because, we're paying a contractor to come to Sandy and do the work and that has a cost associated with it compared. So the amount of work that they're doing, price will come down.
So we're
So
looking at 120 to 130K for,
that's a safe
Budget
number,
number.
yes. Yep.
Jeez.
it's a,
how much does it cost to like hire volunteers?
just stand there,
Well,
yeah.
I'm doing it.
So what I will say is, is there a cost? Yes. As I mentioned earlier, this, sort of came about because there was someone that was struck, arguably because the crossing is so hard to see. And if there's a car parked, near that crosswalk, you can't see the person standing on the sidewalk, right? You can probably see much better a flashing yellow light indicating that someone is standing at that crosswalk, which would hopefully result in people slowing down and then stopping so the pedestrian can cross safely.
Or don't let people park there.
We could certainly look into, moving those, either painting the curb another 3 feet back red or something to try to free up some of that space.
But we were 4 years, I don't lose time. We were concerned when they were redoing the things that we were already losing parking spaces, so
Right.
there's more.
Chris or
Keep in mind, we have unused parking lots in this town.
We do.
Yeah,
Counselor Sheldon
that
or
wasn't there at the
Counselor
time. Mhm.
do you have any comments, guys?
I don't have it.
I will say, as AJ mentioned, this is the engineer's estimate, right? And so we'll use human power that we have internally as much as possible and try to bring those costs down. We do have a requirement from the state gas tax that we get. 1% of that is supposed to go towards pedestrian improvements, whether that's sidewalks, walking paths. I would argue that a crosswalk improvement is eligible for that as well, and falls into that category. So we do have a certain level of funding that is dedicated towards a project like this just in general. The street fund has plenty of money in reserves that we could easily absorb this with no budgetary impact as far as other services or programs that we're implementing. It's within my signing authority to move forward with this stuff. This is really just the check-in of, do we want crosswalks? Are we supportive of this? If the answer to that question is yes, staff can run with this and start working on getting the green ones going, or put the application in for the pink ones and then package it all together in one bundle if that saves us a meaningful amount of money. If that saves us only a couple grand, we'd probably move forward with getting the one that's already approved done right away. But if there's significant cost savings by waiting, we could do them all at one time.
Point of order,
What's that?
question. If this doesn't have to come back to council for a vote and we make a decision on it, have we violated the purpose of the work session?
We're not making a decision. He's just asking for direction.
Yeah, but if that direction is, and then he goes and cuts an order, I would love to see this come back on a consent agenda.
Right,
So,
yeah. Well, they have to get bids and,
But even if,
Well, it's
even if
all
it's under his
within-
authority, I would still like to see it
Oh,
on a
I-
consent
yeah,
agenda,
okay.
just because
Yeah.
of the discussion we're having now.
I have another question on the Strauss one there on Proctor and Strauss.
Which one's that? Green?
The green,
Green.
yeah, one of the green ones.
Top
That's got
green.
also a bus stop right there. Which I've heard causes issues with, are people waiting for the bus or are people trying to cross the street? And the last time we talked about this topic, there was a suggestion to move, and Andy, acknowledged that issue and talked about moving the bus stop. Am I remembering that right?
Yes,
Right.
and I believe that bus stop has been moved now.
Check on that. I'm not.
I'm trying to refresh my memory by the map. So we had talked about moving that crosswalk and moving, I'm sorry, not crosswalk, bus stop, thank you. We had talked about moving that bus stop as well as the bus stop that was further down towards Timberline Meats.
Mhm.
One of them has been moved, but now I'm forgetting which one we did move.
This one by Strauss is the one by Beer Den, and
Yeah, that's the one that we moved. We didn't move the one by Timberline Meats
Timberline's
because
still there.
it has the bus shelter, and so that's a much more difficult process than just moving a sign to the other side of the intersection. So the one in front of the Beer Den has been moved.
Mayor, Councilor Mayton has his hand up.
Counselor Mayton.
I just had a question about the other technologies that you mentioned in your staff report that you don't have pricing for. Do you know when you're going to give that pricing back to us? Because it's a little hard for me to vote to give direction on something about cost when I don't have all the cost factors at hand.
Yeah, so the $65,000 that AJ mentioned bleeds into the next category of conversation, which is the driver feedback signs. The engineer estimate, and AJ jump in here if I have this incorrect, but the engineer's estimate, as I understood it, included the estimated cost for the improvements at the 2 crosswalks we've already talked about, as well as those driver feedback signs. The driver feedback signs, though, that's just running some cables, right? Or
It's minor
wires.
improvements,
And
yeah.
so the vast majority of that 65,000 is the crosswalk improvements that need to happen. but we're waiting for the detailed breakdown, and that has been exceedingly difficult to get in a user-friendly format.
Yes,
Is that a fair statement?
that's fair, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so just to clarify, what I think I heard you say was that the $65,000 was for the 2 crosswalks and the driver feedback signs.
Yes,
The 2 of them, which are at
West- Westbound and
either
eastbound.
end
Yep.
before the split.
that's correct, yes.
Well, I think we have to do something at a minimum the green, just because it's such a long path, and so many, I think that makes sense to the green areas. I'm scratching my head as to whether for that price, the purple is enough of a value. It could be, I see a lot of people running across between Sanlandia and cutting across the highway there, but
That's a
if that's
huge-
far enough away from Sanlandia, I don't know if they'll use it.
I do see quite a few people midday using that crosswalk at Beers where Dairy Queen is.
Yeah.
I am assuming, and I don't know this to be the case, but I'm assuming that's a lot of foot traffic from either like high school or elementary school, not high school, middle school or elementary school employees that are running over to the food carts at lunch, or other people that are working in the downtown area. So that crosswalk does get used pretty frequently, at least just for my visual analysis. I don't have any data to support that other than what I see on a day-to-day basis. So I don't think that I don't think it would be a bad use of funds to ensure that the other set of crosswalks that have signage already are lit up and well seen.
And just having those lights there, whether they're on or off, it's another visual reminder to pay attention, slow down.
Well, especially certain times of year when the sun is in the driver's eyes,
Yeah.
it'll catch your attention.
Yeah,
Do we have enough money in the account to do both if the numbers come back? Okay,
The street fund is healthy currently. We've got somewhere in the $2 million range in contingency in street funds. So call this $100,000 for what we're talking about right now between those 4 crosswalks and the driver feedback signs. We can easily absorb that with no, huge cut, with no cut at all really to anything else that we have planned for in the near future with the street fund.
still a ridiculous price.
Are these voluntary upgrades by us? They're not required by the state?
That's correct.
So what happens if in 6 months or a year, the state requires something completely different and we've invested in these and they have to make a move, we can't predict the future. It's
I would never do
a
that.
crystal
That's what
ball
they-
question, but it could be that we invest in these and then they say, nope, you can't have it here, or you need 3 more. You know what I mean? We can't plan for that, but if it's something we're voluntarily doing, I think it's necessary, but I'm just concerned that the state will say, well, that's great and all, but here you go. How much more money do you have to spend?
So I would say to that question, 2 of these have already been approved. And they've
Okay.
approved them, with this sort of similar style infrastructure that we're talking about. So if they were to come back and say, no, you can't do that, they need to pay then for those upgrades, is my personal take. Josh,
Okay.
our attorney, may have a different view of that. I don't know if he's on. But if they're mandating that we change something that they gave us approval for after we've installed it, I would push back significantly on that those 2 crosswalks in particular. I would assume that the application process hopefully would be faster this next go around than it was the first time for the remaining 2 crosswalks. But I think we can expect a similar outcome, right? There's gonna have to be some modifications that are made to ensure that it's ADA compliant and accessible for those that are visually impaired and meet all the other requirements. So all that to say, if it's been approved at 2 of them, it should get approved at the other 2. And if they decide to change infrastructure requirements, then that should be a 20 years from now when we have to replace it, we eat that cost. Or if they want an immediate replacement, they need to pick up that tab. Josh, do you have any legal analysis that you would like to share on that point?
No, I think that's pretty much what I would have said too.
Counselor Henley?
Yes, I totally agree. I think yes on all of that. I just wanted to bring up Sandy Grade, that crosswalk at Sandy Grade, and it sounds like that might be an option at a lower price point because it wouldn't need ODOT. It would need ODOT approval and it might be in those thousands of dollars. Is that something that anybody would be interested in exploring as well?
Are you speaking of Pleasant Street?
The Pleasant Street, Sandy Grade crossing, yeah, right next to,
It goes
like
under the
Miss
bank.
Bank.
So can I interrupt just for a moment?
Yeah, your discussion.
So I'm seeing head nods and yes in support for definitely the two crosswalks we have approval for. We can work with ODOT for approval on the other two crosswalks. Counselor Mayton and Counselor Sheldon, I can't see your heads because you're behind me.
See a thumbs
I
up.
see some
from both.
thumbs up. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of put a bow on that and move into the next
Put the
crosswalk.
bow on, yeah.
Okay,
Okay, so I do want to understand better, because here, let me back up. ODOT's, in a sea of red ink and not, going anywhere positive here with this legislative session. I mean, what that tells me is the way they do business is really not sustainable. And so I would feel better if we fought back a little bit more on, hey, we can do this and meet the ADA and meet the, visibility stuff and whatever. But if we can, if there's a huge difference in what the thing is that we put out on Bluff and what we put down here, then just help me out and make me understand why that costs so much more. And I'm sure part of the benefit we had was we did it in-house, and that probably saved money too. But I guess I would like to kind of understand, and if possible, push back as much as possible to ODOT to say, hey, we put in these feedback signs on 211 for this much, and we put in this one over here that meets the criteria for this much. And this is how we, and I mean, for part of me, I just feel like if they've given us permission to put them in, as long as we're meeting the criteria for what the standards are for these things, and I get that we need to move it a little bit to kind of put the sign in slightly different so that it's more accessible, but I'm just trying to kind of understand how we could go from, that much of a change. And maybe, I don't know what the feedback side, I don't know the breakdown on the $65,000. So maybe it's, going from 6 to 10,000 or something like that. And that's because it's slightly different or better or more. It's been 5 years since we put it in or whatever. I just kind of want to understand what the difference is. And then if we can have, do something that's feasible for cheaper and not have all the bells and whistles that ODOT insists on that are kind of over and above what is legally necessary, I would like us to push back on that, because I just feel like, that's why they're in the situation they are. And we're all in the situation. It's all of us, because, they're kind of gold plating every project they get involved in.
So with the way that this was submitted to ODOT initially, it was just, we're going to do these here. This is what they're going to look like. Those type of details. We did not expect the need to change the ADA ramp at all. So with that in mind, and it sounds like council being on board with this, we will go and actually get a detailed design and actually take a look, get some measurements, take a look at what this actually would look like. And we may be able to realize some savings like that if we can move something differently or change something differently.
Are we
This is
changing the ramp or just where?
minor changes to the ramp, but we need to put some new concrete down. So
Okay, that helps understand.
Yeah,
I didn't realize
I think
there's concrete.
I think it's
involved.
almost cured from the last time we.
yeah, exactly.
I mean, the number was a preliminary estimate, and quite frankly, I just needed to get the green light of continue to go down this path because we want these improvements, or no. And so I'm hearing a resounding yes on these specific crosswalks.
On the two green ones. What's do we want to talk about street stuff or school stuff or the purple ones?
I'm under the assumption that there was head nods for purple as well to move
Yeah.
forward with
Yeah.
those improvements.
Okay. All right,
Now we're on to Sandy Grade.
is that,
So-
that,
My next question for the group is, are there other crosswalks in town that you feel need special attention or improvements? I know I've heard from a couple of you that have mentioned crosswalks near Sandy Grade
and Cedar Ridge.
and Cedar Ridge. That dovetails a little bit into, well, a lot, into safe routes to schools. We have a 2020 safe routes to school plan that outlined improvements near Cedar Ridge and near Sandy Grade. If the engineer's estimate that we got for the crosswalks is similar to that of the safe routes to school estimates that we got, there's a 40% construction contingency built in there too. So that 65,000, not to go back in time with what we just talked about, but could have a very healthy contingency, which is not gonna be actually seen as far as expenditure goes. But back to what we were talking about, there are several improvements identified in the Safe Routes to School plan that frankly are some low-hanging fruit, right? There's some restriping of crosswalks along Pleasant. There's some additional crosswalk improvements at the intersection of Hood and Bluff, mostly just repainting that crosswalk. I think the curb cuts or I think the ramps, one of the ramps at that intersection has already been
Yes.
replaced.
Yep.
The other one has not. Both of them at the time the study was done needed to be replaced. So there's some stuff that's already sort of been slightly addressed. There's other really low hanging fruit that we can move forward with as far as some additional stop signs and painting of crosswalks and things. But maybe a less direct answer to what you were talking about, Councilor Hanley, is if there's interest in beefing up the pedestrian safety within the Safe Routes to School zone, Safe Routes to School grant program opens up sometime this month in February. We can work on pulling out some of those more pedestrian focused items that were in the 2020 plan and work on putting together an application to see how far we get in that process. I did meet with Aaron Bayer from Oregon Trail School District today to talk about Safe Routes to School. I think that there's an appetite to work together to do some of these projects. It's just a matter of what the actual cost is. So we certainly need to get some revised estimates, from 2020. As we all know, construction costs for anything from 5 or 6 years ago are pretty significantly different in some cases today. But I guess all that to say, there is some willingness to work together and try to get some of that low hanging fruit and sort of immediate and quick repairs along Pleasant. Some of the Cedar Ridge stuff that's identified in the Safe Routes to School plan is a little bit more labor intensive. There's some like widening of the sidewalk and moving of fences. And so I think that could be a larger discussion that is probably going to take a lot more collaboration.
Maybe
but
next year's. Probably
yeah, but I think as far as Pleasant goes, I think there's some really quick and easy stuff that we could move forward with and get an application submitted, see if we can get any sort of funding from the state. There's a 40% match for Safe Routes to Schools. That if we had, some cost share with the school district, I think we can get quite a bit done along Pleasant and near.
State pays 60, we pay 40.
State pays 60. The applicant has a 40% match. At least that's how it's worked in the past. To be fair, I have not looked at the upcoming grant application to see if any of those percentages have changed, but in the past it has been a 60-40 split.
Is the, on that Sandy Grade School, is the proposed crossing across Pleasant Street on the La Bamba side or on our property side?
Jeff, I sent you a link to the Safe Routes to School. Do you want to pull that up really quick? There's a
Sure.
map in here.
We've got four-way
find it right
crosswalks marked at both of those, which is nice. They probably need a little touch up.
They need some touch up, yeah.
Well, yeah.
Page 41.
Do you have a handle on where most kids I know there's a crossing guard that gets posted there on all.
It is the Clackamas County Bank one,
Oh.
the one that has the four-way stop. That's the one where folks run it. They go around the
So that's
buses
where we
and,
want the,
yeah.
Zoom in, yep, please.
okay.
Pardon?
I just asked Jeff to zoom in.
Oh, sorry.
So on this map, if you want to just zoom in more on the map itself,
I have a
is that
hard
as
time,
far as you
yeah.
go?
So number one is Sandy
Number
Grade.
one
just
is
so we
Sandy
orient
Grade.
ourselves, yeah.
Well, 1 and 2, right? 1 is the playground of Sandy Grade, 2 is the street of Sandy Grade. So intersection 4, I think Councilor Hanley is what you were talking about, and that is the 4-way stop that used to go into the Cedar Ridge Middle School property. As you all know, that property has been fenced off, so that's not a thoroughfare any longer. There are some parking spots there, but it's not a highly traveled route going through that intersection north-south any longer. Excuse me. So we could work on some better crossings there, repainting, the crosswalk stripes have a name. AJ, what are those called? Crosswalk stripes?
Crosswalk.
Crossbars.
Yeah.
That's it. We could work on repainting those.
But if you were to put a light, like Councilor Hanley's talking, would you do it on the west side or the east side?
That's what you're saying, on the east side, the alt one.
Okay, No, that would be the west side, the way you're.
The west side of the alt
That's the
That's the west
intersection.
side. Okay. the
Oh,
west
right,
side.
right, okay, I thought-
Thank you.
yeah.
I think that makes more sense because you have kids coming out of there.
That's your direction of travel.
That's the direction of travel.
Right.
It's going to the crosswalk that's
going-
at Highway 26 as well, so it keeps
Yeah.
everyone
Yeah.
sort of.
Trying to avoid Highway 26 to get through town.
Yeah.
So that's the direction we're going.
Guilty as charged.
Yep. And then I think, in
I like lighting
intersection,
that up, especially in the dark parts of the month, dark parts of the winter and stuff.
For the little guys, those are
Yeah.
little people crossing.
And then the chance of doing it at Bluff and Hood, kind of crossing Hood, is that,
Bluff
and just
and
like doing
Hood.
the one that we did at the football field.
Oh,
Yeah, I
that's a bad
think,
one.
let's, Jeff, if you want to go to
Because there's
page
so much traffic, yeah.
35.
Yeah, my son got clipped there on a bike.
Yeah, and there's, it's, I mean, that's where all the drop off is happening and just a cluster.
Yeah, so that is near number 3 on this map, the intersection of Bluff and Hood.
Yep.
We could certainly pull the scope of work out of the safe routes to school and include
Yeah.
that intersection
Yeah.
as well. Where it gets really tricky in the safe routes to school, you can see just north of number 3, we maybe can't really see it. There's like some crosswalk widening and sidewalk widening
Yeah,
and fence. That's gonna, I think, get complicated and messy when we don't have a full.
Bluff and Hood?
Yeah.
Is there a crosswalk at Bluff and Hood?
There is
There's no
not.
crosswalk. at
there's
Bluff
not
and
a
Hood.
It's for
No,
crossing
Mark-
Hood,
Crossing Hood.
Crossing Hood is a crosswalk, if I believe.
north-south traffic crossing Hood.
Crossing Hood,
Yeah.
okay. You said Bluff and Hood, so I'm like, there's no.
I'm saying
crosswalk
that
on
intersection of Bluff and Hood. Yeah.
well, yeah, I think we should kind of be looking at that. And then,
Yeah, the other option.
I would almost suggest, I mean, I'm moving, if we're looking at a crosswalk at Bluff and Hood, I'd almost suggest moving it further up Hood. And here's why, and maybe the police chief has some thoughts, but you've got all the traffic literally turning off of Highway 26 onto Bluff. That's a very short stretch of road. You get traffic backed up there and people just kind of push onto Hood Street is what happens. I would think if you move that crosswalk up, maybe people wouldn't utilize it, but it'd get them out of that traffic mess that's right there. And you're really close to the entrance of the school as well.
You
That's
know-
kind of a weird blind corner though with the parking lot, and there is one down at Meeker. I think is the one on Meeker. and
Meeker's
20
on
and
Bluff though, I'm talking about Hood,
Oh, on Hood.
yeah. I know what you're saying.
Moving, I'm trying to understand. So moving instead of right
Moving it east,
parallel,
instead, moving the crosswalk east on Hood instead of right there
I
at Bluff
see.
and Hood.
like to more aligned with the stairs that go down there or something like that.
Mhm.
yeah,
It'd be nice if
getting
the
them
district
away
actually
from-
made that an
From that
actual
cluster of
entrance that was
traffic that's
more
coming off of the
usable.
highway.
yeah, the kids are just pouring across because they're going,
Well, they always
to
have, I
go- and they
mean,
go to Tollgate and, it's like,
They're going to Walgreens.
yeah, Walgreens and all that. So,
they're going to the food carts, they're going wherever they want.
well, it's just, if they're gonna. I mean, usually they're going to the shortest route, and so trying to train them to go down towards the tennis courts is probably,
Well,
You would,
kids aren't necessarily gonna use crosswalks.
No.
I'm just thinking, I'm just in my head thinking if it wouldn't be safer to just move them out of that intersection. Then you've got some teeth to force people into intersections, but again, I'm just throwing something out there. It's not.
I mean, I do think and this isn't identified in the safe routes to school plan, but a flashing crosswalk at Hood and Beers, where you see the 2 stop signs on the lower right-hand side of your screen. There could be some logic in that because then Beers would connect to Highway 26 where the pink and the staff report is. So you'd have a thoroughfare that is not Bluff or 26 of pedestrian traffic, although that's retraining people. I don't know how easy it is to retrain people.
Well, I mean, they're always gonna take the shortest path, and I agree with that. Somebody just said that, and you are true, and like I said, kids are gonna cross where they cross, but.
Yeah.
But at least. Yeah, I don't know.
so when I went to the University of Utah, the way they planted the sidewalks is they'd wait till it snowed. And then after a good snowstorm, you know where you should have put the sidewalk.
You
And
see that?
And I think that kind of logic for this is probably, for me, It's where the people are gonna walk, and if they're gonna walk there anyway, we make it as safe as possible. Or if it's not safe, we prohibit them from walking there as best we can.
I think a crosswalk there is a good reminder as a driver that you have to stop before the crosswalk. Because I think I'm totally guilty of pulling up into that intersection a little bit to try to look around the corner to see what traffic is, but if that stop sign, you know, if those striped reminder is there to stop and then proceed forward a little bit.
I mean, for me, that's where all the chaos is happening. That's where they're crossing, you know, we got the pedestrians, we got the vehicles. It is just really
Which
kind
is
of a mess.
exactly why, and I agree with you. That's why I was
Yeah.
thinking if we move that crosswalk up, you eliminate some of that.
But
But
if they don't use it, that doesn't really fix it.
Right.
It just keeps it.
I mean,
then they're jaywalking.
yeah,
Then we have another
no.
issue.
And
No,
then think
they're
of
not.
everybody pulling out
'Cause
of the
there's-
high school drivers.
I mean, that was the great thing about what I love that you guys did that sting, and I love all the discussion on Facebook because, you know, so many folks that were reading that had no idea what an official crosswalk was and what, you know, mid-block, if it's marked, it's a crosswalk. On every intersection, it's a crosswalk. So that was just really helpful for a lot of us to learn that. I mean, I kind of knew it, but yeah. Thank you for, you guys, you know, kudos to the whole team that did that.
I will say, where Hood intersects with Bluff, if Google Maps is up to date, which I think it is relatively recently, there's just a stop bar there. So to your point, there isn't good like crosswalk designation.
No, there's not.
minimum, we should repaint it.
So
There's no-
repainting,
There's
Crosswalk at all.
reduced, there's a, broken, what do you call the sidewalks? that-
Curb cut.
Curb cut, yeah,
Yeah.
there's curb cuts on either side.
Yeah, so it's an applied crosswalk, it's just not painted. We should make it explicit.
Mhm.
I think that's a good idea.
At least that way,
Yeah,
you eliminate some excuses for people, or at least some awareness.
and that's a prime example of some of the low hanging fruit that's identified in the Safe Routes to School thing, that Safe Routes to School document that we frankly should have done 5 years ago when we got it, and it just sort of, COVID happened, it
Yeah.
fell dormant.
yeah.
We're resurrecting it, so there's a lot of those relatively simple, cost-effective solutions that we can implement that will at least hopefully bring more visibility to. This is a designated place to cross, right? Be aware of what's going on around you.
And I want to have enough time to kind of talk about these other bigger
Yeah.
options. But I will say, just, I would like to kind of find out from you all what the options are of painting zebra, cross marks or whatever you call them,
Crosswalk bars.
crosswalk bars in other places in downtown.
Okay.
Just because people seem to kind of think if there's not
On
a
26.
crossbars, yeah, on
Yeah.
Proctor Pioneer, on some of the higher priority ones. We don't have to talk about it right now, but I just do want to hear more about that because I think people, you know, that what I learned from reading all these Facebook comments is people don't think it's a crosswalk if there's not, you know, but if there is, then they're kind of looking out for it more.
Yeah,
So even though we're not going to get permission or the money to do all this other stuff, if we can at least do some of the high priority, you know, we've got like 39, I counted all the intersections, possibilities just in the downtown sections. There's like 35, you know, possible sides of the street that we need to deal with. So
I can put feelers out to ODOT and see what their take will be on that before actually going for the whole review process, just so I can get that information to the council. I also need to do a little personal research on the flashing lights at the intersections mentioned here. Since they are at stop signs, I was looking at mid-block intersections. I need to figure out what the rules are for that, so I understand it better. If it's appropriate, Tyler, can I just give you that information? It could be a weekend update type thing.
Yeah, we can
Okay.
share it out with the council and.
Can I play devil's advocate for just a second? And this pertains to Chief Husky. If we have the painted crosswalks, does that imply a more secure crossing for a pedestrian and less attention to what's going on around them? Do we need a visual sign for people walking to say, hey, you know, this is a crosswalk, but it's putting some of the responsibility back on the person crossing just because there's lines there doesn't mean people are going to stop.
So like a sign that says run or?
Well, I don't know, but for me, when I see a crosswalk, I feel more confident that I have the right of way. And the assumption that everyone else knows the same thing, that we're dealing with kids, middle school, high school kids.
So the way I understand the law, based off our pedestrian operation, they want, even in an uncontrolled intersection, it is still
Right.
considered a crosswalk. So
Okay.
the
It's the
drivers,
same, right?
to be safe entering those areas,
Okay,
right? So once you're, let's say you're at the curb, you're trying to cross, once you step into that plane, That is when all traffic is required by law to stop and let you proceed. So whether or not there are
Cross or not.
crossbars there or not,
Okay,
doesn't change what the driver is supposed to be doing.
And the awkwardness is when you cross that plane and there's a parked car,
Yeah, on
no
both
one
sides.
sees that you crossed
Right.
the plane.
Correct.
That's the problem. We have so many
Yeah.
intersections downtown and there's parking on both sides. And so a crossbars, signal my brain to go, oh, there's a crosswalk there. I may not see the people, behind the cars or whatever, but I can certainly see the crossbars and I slow down and look and I'd be sure and look for the pedestrians. That's why I kind of think crossbars are, I can't, not having them every intersection down there, obviously, because it'll look like a, probably zebra stripe or something driving down there.
It'll lose the impact. If you don't have it,
Right.
Right,
Yeah.
you'll just ignore them all, right?
Okay, do you have enough information to proceed with the pedestrian stuff?
We'll do our
definitely.
homework on that. The last thing I will say is the intersection or the crosswalk rather at University and Highway 26 is a nightmare at night. I mean, I frequently, when I leave here and it's pitch black out, I'm like nervous I'm gonna hit someone in that crosswalk because it's so dark.
Francis Pale is closed down.
So we are gonna also explore what improvements would need to be had at that intersection. There is no signage for a crosswalk currently, so that's gonna be a more in-depth process with ODOT.
Can you explore the dark factor as well?
Yeah, and maybe it's, a PGE thing, if we could just get another street light or something over there, I don't know, but I just want to highlight that intersection as something that we talk about frequently as being really dark and unsafe. And so we're gonna do some legwork there to see what can be done and if there is something to be done, what the cost of that is.
Okay, let's talk about the other thing, the other options. And
Yeah.
you hand out those maps that I made up for speed limits, because that was really helpful for me when I was looking at your staff report. Just understanding it and kind of to the university thing, that part is 40 miles an hour and it goes from 40 to 25. And so that's, part of what makes it so unsafe is that, it's not well lit at night and there is like a divider in the middle that you could kind of get halfway across the street. But the
So Mayor, did you want to talk about your map first, or do you want to talk about these driver feedback signs at the east and west?
let's do the driver feedback sign. I just want people to understand what the speed limits
Yeah.
are when we're talking about this stuff.
Okay, so AJ just stepped out, but he will be right back.
Okay.
The part of the work that we have already done with ODOT as well was installation of some driver feedback signs at the east and west entry points of downtown. So if you're traveling eastbound,
It's been 20 years.
we had proposed to ODOT the installation of a driver feedback signs for right in front of toll gates. Reinforcing the fact that you're dropping your speed further, going into 25 mile per hour, going into the downtown. ODOT did approve that location. And then if you're going westbound, I think you're all familiar with that sort of cross, you go kind of past Langenstand and it drops down to 25. What some would say very quickly, if you're from around here, you know that that's coming. It would just be one more, reminder or warning to vehicles that you are entering an area of reduced speed. Be mindful of how fast you're going. So ODOT has given their approval for both of these. Again, that's part of the $65,000 engineer's estimate that we have currently. The one thing that I will say, depending on the conversation that comes next, as far as photo radar goes, we do have to make sure that there's enough distance between a driver feedback sign and the photo radar so that those frequencies don't interfere with each other. You can't have, two radars, same thing, measuring the same thing from two different sources. I don't know the technical side of that. I just know there's that we have to be cognizant of the fact that you have to provide enough distance. So those driver feedback signs might move a couple feet one way or another to make sure that the infrastructure doesn't bleed into one another, if that makes sense. But generally speaking, it would be somewhere on the east end, just past 10 Langenstand, on the west side of town, in front of Tollgate.
And these are included in the estimate you already gave us,
Yes.
including the equipment and the installation.
Not the equipment for the feedback signs. We got the equipment for the RFBs, but not for the feedback signs. included in that.
The insulation would be included, but not
Correct.
not, and the signage itself would be approximately.
I will get back to you on that. I apologize.
When I was doing some research, the feedback sign itself, there were a couple $1,000 a
Yeah,
piece,
I remember
depending on
that
what
being less than
size. and-
10,000.
Yeah, it's not a huge amount of money. My apologies, I thought that was included in the 65,000, so we can revise that quote.
Can you kind of clarify, you said you had talked to ODOT or somebody's talked to ODOT about extending like the 25 or, because the situation here is that as long as I've lived here 39 years, we have not changed speed limits on any of these roads, despite the fact that we've grown that much, and we've got all these new subdivisions, all that stuff is all new. And we have, all the stuff, Vista Loop and all that stuff that's kind of coming in. We've got DeBarco going to be coming in, and it just feels like, the first thing I would be doing if I was looking at trying to make the roads safer is, not having 45 and 55 mile an hour speed limits and, reduce it. So,
We looked at this when I first got on council, my first year on council, we
Did you?
looked at this.
but nothing that happened, right?
Because ODOT was unwilling to change speed limits.
So, what's confusing to me is because it talks about, speed limits in residential zones being 25 miles an hour, and yet, so can you kind of clarify for me what the options are there, or what ODOT said to you and how long ago the conversation was?
Yeah, so I think there's two parts to this question, so bear with me. There was a request put into ODOT 8 months ago-ish, for some potential speed reduction along 26, between Langensan and Luzon Lane. I think all of that currently is,
Luzon is what?
Luzon is where, what's the burger place?
Calamity James.
Calamity James is at.
Oh, that far, okay, yeah.
And that, if I remember correctly, maybe Jeff or AJ, you can fill in the blank here, was sort of in conjunction with Bull Run Terrace development, punching DeBarco through to Highway 26, being cognizant of the fact that you're gonna have
Right.
left and right
That's right.
turners out of that
Yeah.
intersection.
Right,
So like I said, we submitted that request to ODOT in summer of 25. We just heard back on Friday that oh no, I'm sorry, we submitted it first in October of 24, re-engaged in August of 25. We just heard back from ODOT on Friday that a field investigation has been completed and a draft report is expected to be completed and sent to the region traffic engineer before being sent off to the state traffic engineer. So ODOT's working on it. We don't have any idea if it's a thumbs up, a thumbs down. They
How long is
haven't
that
given
now?
us.
In the pipeline?
October of 24 is when it was originally submitted, and then we
it's
had,
Still got 10 more engineers to go.
Read about
They
that.
just finished the field work.
Yes.
No.
Wow.
This
So-
is, this has been my entire experience. This is how ODOT, this is the speed at which they work.
yes.
but I did talk to, ask.
So that's the first part, if I can just,
Right, go ahead.
that's
sure.
the first part of your question is
So
as
you're
far
going
as
to Luzon
26.
for 25, is that the proposal?
I'm sorry, let me
No,
pull
it'll
up
be
the
25
proposal.
miles an hour. I'll never agree to that. It's on my way.
So segment 1,
It's a 55 mile right now.
segment,
To the-
so I
25
didn't
to
really
11.
put this on a map. I should have done this, but segment 1 is from Wolf to Langensan, keeping that all 25. Because currently right after Wolf, it goes up to 40.
Yeah.
So reducing that from 40 down to 25, and then the next stretch from Langensan to Luzon is currently 55, reducing that to 40. So it would be slowing the traffic as it
Right.
comes in, ideally being in that 40 mile per hour range as you hit where DeBarco would in theory come out, and then go down to 25 as you enter into the downtown corridor.
So looking at this map, the purple there would go to red and the green would go to purple.
Correct, on your map that you provided. Jeff, you want to pull this? Can you
Oh, sure.
screen share this so that Councilor Mayton and Sheldon can see what we're looking at?
Yes.
There, guys.
Thank you.
Sorry, we're
You can
working on
email
that.
it to them, too. Was there discussion about the westbound stuff too? Or not? Or we don't have any traffic studies that indicated the need for that, like a Bull Run Terrace type?
I'm not aware of any studies that we've requested for the west side of 26. It was specifically kicked off with that development of Bull Run Terrace's property.
So that's, you know, if Bell 362nd starts coming online, that's probably something that we should be looking at.
I think that's a fair point to make, you know, as more development happens in that area and the traffic increases even beyond what it already is, that would probably warrant a study just to make sure that those speeds are what they should be. There was a second part to your question, and now I'm going to ask if you can repeat it because I don't remember. There was something about residential.
Oh, that, you know, what I heard from Mike was that, you know, ODOT used to have all these studies that are required and everything else, and that's why it took like 10 years for them to do everything, and that's why nothing ever happened. But they did change the rules about, you know, what it would take to happen, I guess. I don't quite know how they all changed, but it sounded like, you know, we could, like what happened with Bull Run Terrace, there, you know, a traffic study that could be done that they could then respond to and, you know, quicker. I don't know if the answer is any different, but at least the timeline seems to be going from 2 or 3 years to, you know, not 10.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully hopefully it doesn't take 10. It's taken plenty of time enough to get this one stretch of road done. I guess, you know, the only point that I can make is that staff is continuing to follow up on this specific request and poking and prodding. I don't know if that's sped up the process or if they've just had some internal, I hate to say efficiencies when it's still taken a year and a half before we even got a report, but it's faster than 10 years. So it's heading in the right direction.
Can I request something for a follow-up meeting? Just looking, because we talked about this way back. I think it's House Bill 3055 according to Google. Maybe you can come back and give us an overview of how that would allow us to set our own speed limits. I think that's the legislation that Mike was probably referring to that changed how.
Is that on Highway 26 or on other streets, these streets?
Not clear from my Google AI quick
Okay,
search,
yeah.
which is why I think
Yeah.
having him come back and
Yeah.
tell us what it would apply to.
I think Jeff's done a little
Do you have a
research
year
on
on
that.
that, Counselor?
2021.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we got some advice on this issue from our traffic engineer in 2023, I believe, so that would cover this. And I don't know if you want,
Oh, you have the email, I think, more handy than I do. So if you want to.
it is complicated, so please bear with me.
And we can do it another day.
Yeah.
Because
Well, the quick snapshot is that there are my understanding is there are two basic ways that you can do it. You can either, you know, commission a traffic study. That may be different than it used to be, like we can spearhead that
we
ourselves.
can commission our own. with
Right.
That's what it sounds
But you gotta pay for it, okay. Or there's this other seldom used option, which is setting a statutory speed limit. Which we were initially intrigued by, I remember this discussion, but I don't think it actually serves the need that we want because it's severely limited. What you're allowed to do under those provisions.
Yeah, it's 25 miles residential, 20 business. And 50
Yeah, but
rural.
you're right, there was something, because there was something that was gonna affect, that was gonna be detrimental. I don't remember,
Yeah, there
I
was.
vaguely remember the
It's
conversation, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's bring
Something-
that back for another meeting.
Yeah.
The only reason I brought it up was because does these potential changes we're talking about for speed limits have any influence on the driver feedback sign or the camera stuff that we're talking about? And, you know, maybe it doesn't because whatever, you know, we'll set the cameras to whatever the speed limit is when it happens or something. So that's kind of, I just wanted to
Yeah.
make sure that's,
We'll do some more homework and follow up with an answer on the specific question that was just asked. But I think just in general, speeding is a problem in various areas of this community, and I don't think that a reduction is going to stop speeding. They're still going to be speeding, maybe at a lower level, but they're going to be going, you know, 35 in the 25 now instead of 45 in the 35 or whatever that incremental difference is. And so I think that there's other means that we can try to enforce, warn, provide clarity of when you're, you know, approaching that reduced speed, and then enforce it beyond just the blanket reduction. I don't know if that would have the effect that we would hope it would have, because oftentimes people just disregard the speed signs, right? And they go what feels comfortable as they're driving, and they're not really looking at the
I think
posted
we're
speed
getting to
next to
that
them.
part.
But we're getting to that
People
part.
disregard
Yeah.
speeds now. Did you get what you needed as far as your, what did you call them, the flashing?
The driver feedback signs. Yeah. So is there support in installing those and providing that warning as you migrate into the downtown area?
And are those, okay, so we're gonna talk about the next thing with, you know, the
Photo
speed-
radar,
photo
red
radar,
light
whatever,
camera.
is,
Yep.
do they see the feedback sign before they get to that?
They
I mean, I
would.
hope, yeah, that's my,
Yeah.
you know, like warning, warning.
Yeah, it
And
would
then,
be,
you
it would be
know,
another tool
carrot,
in the
stick.
tool belt
Right.
of,
Okay.
you know, one, you're approaching a community, so you should probably be more aware of your driving as you're coming into a downtown. Two, there's a posted speed sign that says 40 or 25. Three, there's now a flashing driver feedback sign that says you're going 55 still as you enter the 25. And then the fourth thing is you go through that intersection, you're still going 45. Now there's potentially a consequence depending on how the next section of this conversation goes.
Sorry, just one last thing on that. I know the traditional driver feedback signs say the amount of mile, you know, what you're speeding as, but I've seen the ones that just say too fast. And have you guys seen those? It says too fast instead of telling you the speed that you're going.
Yeah.
Is there any interest in exploring those? Maybe I prefer those because it's my own feedback. Like it says too fast and then I look to see how fast I'm going. It's not a game. Whether you're, you know, oh, I got it to go 75, I got it to go. I don't know. I prefer those, but I don't know if anybody else.
Who in your household makes it a game?
I don't.
She's around middle school boys all
Right?
day.
Yes, everything's a game.
Some of us still think like that.
Fair.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if there's any teeth to those or if there's a difference in.
I guess
is there-
and I'm kind of with you because like, I guess, when you guys see those signs flash, do you slow down?
Yes.
See, I don't either.
Not the one, the bridge between,
The one out here
two
in town.
twenty-four,
Plug your ears,
the
chief.
cutoff from Clackamas to Estacada. That one just says slow down, and I'm like, if I slow down, I'm gonna get run over by the semi behind me, so it's kind of not realistic to slam on the brakes going from 55 to 35 and get plowed into by an 18 wheeler.
I'm not a big fan of slow down on curve signs. I will admit to that.
Well, and
But when
I
I
guess
see
my
one
question is
in a
to any
city,
of
I-
them,
yes.
is if people
For me, I
don't
slow
slow
down.
down when they see them.
Yeah, I think it's gonna come down to, there will be people who are just, I wasn't paying attention enough and it's gonna pull me
That's fair.
in, and that's me in most of the occasions. And then there's people that are just not gonna care, and I think that's what the next part of this is all about.
Can we get to that part? I think, you know, I guess, you know,
I defer.
to your point, Counselor Hanley, you know, I mean, look into the options as for the driver feedback sign.
Yeah.
You know, maybe you can make it whatever you want, you know, the speed, what they're going,
Yeah.
or too fast, or slow down, or.
There's gotta be a study on what's effective.
I think
too.
the slowdown would be more effective if we did agree on the cameras. Because if it says what speed, everybody's gonna slam on the brakes, we're not gonna get any revenue if there is. any
Great, but that
from
solves the
cameras.
problem, doesn't it?
It does, that keeps
But
us
we know it
safer,
won't
that
because
keeps us safer, of
there's some of us
course.
who won't.
But we give everybody 4 chances, and if they blow the 4th one doing 55,
Yeah.
then.
There is technology currently too, and I won't tell you how I know this, but I do know this, that if you're going a certain speed, it shows you how fast you're traveling, and then once you're in excess of a speed, it then blinks in red too fast.
Oh,
So there is kind of a best of both worlds. If
I
you're going
haven't seen
just 10 or
that
12 over the speed limit, it's telling you you're going 37 and a 25, but once you hit a certain threshold, and I don't know what that threshold is, it is red and not yellow, and it tells you you're too
Jason
fast.
Voorhees just pops up with a machete. You're done.
I'm gonna blame my wife. It was her that triggered this. It's not entirely true. but
Let's get
that's
to
okay.
the exciting part.
So there's support for the driver feedback signs. We'll explore some middle of the road
Messages, yeah.
messages. Okay, AJ, you're good. Thank you.
Night, everybody.
Thank you, AJ.
Thank you.
I'm gonna invite Chief Husky and Heidi up to the table now as well. So, you know, I anticipated that the first two topics probably the easier topics to go over this evening. The third one is certainly, from my perspective, more in line with the enforcement component of the council goal. These first two are, you know, warnings and reminders, but if you want to accomplish the enforcement side of council goal 1.3, then this is one of the more likely avenues to go about doing that. Heidi, if you don't mind, you want to just share a little bit about your feedback and the Nova Global and kind of what you do and the study that you performed?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Okay. Hello, thank you for having me tonight. I really appreciate the opportunity to sort of share what we do and how our programs function here in Oregon and in other states. I will say about the radar speed feedback signs, there are those out there that I think when there's a message, it's more effective. We've seen that. My background is I'm a former Seattle Police Department or police officer, detective, retired, and I come to this company in 2018. And my role here is business development. Having been in law enforcement and sharing that experience, our department also has these cameras. And then I just really enjoy being around the law enforcement and community. And traffic enforcement for me is kind of a passion. Our school, that when my kids were little, we had 2 first graders that were hit and killed. And so for me, it got quite personal. So I'm a true believer. But for the radar speed signs, there are a few different on the market, and some say speed limit 45, too fast, slow down. You can program them. There's a lot of new technology that's really effective now, and there's flashing lights within them that can be red. You want to be careful and comply with the METCD, the rules of the road, but also there's just a wide range of possibilities that I think are quite effective. And yes, that since those operate on radar and our systems, these systems also operate on radar. If you think of radar like a flashlight, it's like a light. And so you have reflections. And so we don't want to pick up the reflection off of a radar speed display sign. We also don't want to have conflicting reports. Radar signs are a lot less accurate than our systems. So, those are good for people to get within the range. I mean, even if they were off 2-3 miles per hour, ours are off a 1/10. So we don't want to have that conflict either. We slow the drivers down as they approach the speed zone. My company's called Nova Global. We have programs in Newburgh, Beaverton, and now Portland. We took over the Portland contract, and then there we're doing red light cameras and speed cameras. And the red light cameras are a combination of red light and speed. So I'm sure, I'm hoping that you understand what that law is. Okay, so I won't go into that, but.
Are you doing both those in Newburgh? Is that what you said?
Yes.
So I don't assume that I know what you meant by that law is.
That law is that for red light, going through a red light intersection is the light turns red. The car is behind the stop line, behind the crosswalk when the light turns red, and we start a timer in milliseconds. And so on the violation, it will show how long that light was red before the driver crossed into the intersection. And that's also in the data bar of the violation. So, it's not a 1/10 of a second, and you're not trying to trick drivers, that kind of thing. That's never yellow. But then from the speed aspect, it has to be 11 miles an hour and over to qualify as a speed violation.
Okay.
That's what I meant.
Thank you for
Yeah,
clarifying.
sure.
I would have just shook my head yes and not.
Yeah.
So if it's 25 and they're going 36, that's a speed violation. If it doesn't pick up anything going 34. So
Right. I mean, we would not send that to the police department because that's not a violation in this state.
Heidi, can you share a little bit about, and Chief, you as well, right? You two figure out the flow of this, but can you share a little bit about the intersections that were studied, the data that came out of that, and then just your perspective, Heidi, specifically on our community compared to the other communities that you've worked with, right? We had a conversation earlier tonight about how our highway is a little bit different than maybe other communities that have a highway that cut through them.
I think I'd start with how those intersections were selected. Do you want to talk about that? And then what the study looked like?
Sure. I've been looking at this for probably about a year. A lot of this has been based off personal knowledge of working in the area for over 20 years. Knowledge from our police officers that have worked this area, citizen complaints. We quickly determined that the three kind of main intersections we wanted to focus the study on was Highway 26 and Ten Eyck, Highway 26 and Bluff. And then I also had them look at Highway 26 at 362nd with all the Fred Meyer traffic that comes and goes out of that area. We just knew, we know by listening to the radio, we know by the calls for service, that a lot of our crashes tend to come out at Highway 26 and 362nd. They're usually minor fender benders. Whereas the fatalities we've had over the most recent years have been right here as Pioneer and Proctor split, right? We know that this is where fatalities are. So to catch that traffic coming into town on both ends was important. I knew we also had Highway 26 in Orient or Jarl to contend with, but I kind of brought that back up to kind of monitor that Fred Meyer traffic. So I'll let Heidi explain some of the data that she was able to see.
Can you pull that up for me? So the traffic data collectors that I use are about the size of a Pop-Tart box. They don't take pictures. What it is just captures the volumes and the speeds of traffic that passing these collectors. So the first study at those intersections, we captured data, both, the bar chart's actually the best one, I think, for 5 to 7 days, because I thought it was important. Sandy's such a unique city. The bar chart that shows the actual totals at the very end, right there. Sandy, I think more than any other city, and this is what he was referring to, is Beaverton and Portland are like destinations. Sandy, I've never seen a city that's more of a cut through city than here.
We don't like to hear that, but we understand.
Yeah, and I think, when I work with a couple other cities that are very similar in that same roadway dynamic. Mukilteo in Washington State is one where we have a contract and they speed through off the ferries because they're trying to get to Boeing. And it's also a vacation destination. That city also shares a similar dynamic, and residents, they have appealed to residents for forever to slow down, but it's not the residents, and the residents understand. And unfortunately, it's the residents that are really the victims of this. I think I always say it's a lack of investment in the community that they're driving through. They don't know, they don't care, they don't have kids, they probably don't even realize it, that they're just speeding through these areas, or because their mind is on either get me to Bend or get me to work, right? And I'm playing music, I'm yelling at my kids on the speakerphone, whatever. But whatever that scenario is, the last thing they're doing is thinking about traffic compliance through these towns, in your town especially. So when you look at this traffic study, I was really shocked at 26 and Bluff. That is for a day, an average day is almost 3,000 violations. This is for speed.
10 miles or more,
11.
11 or more. Okay.
Yep. And so I took these, so where I put these little data collectors was just at the very first pole, just past the intersection on both sides, so that you had to pass that collector having gone through that intersection, and these were the speeds. So you can see like the data from, the tables in that study. And I think I even did the highest speed. Nope, I didn't, but 45. So you'll see each day, each direction, the posted speed limit, the total volume that you see there, that's how many cars pass the data collector during that 24-hour period. So, I mean, I think the data speaks for itself there, but and tonight,
you're looking at the bar chart on
Yeah.
page 7, right, of our staff report for everybody else.
That's correct.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
so
What page is that? Page 7, yeah.
page 7 staff report. I just point out that on the Highway 26 and 362nd, almost insignificant violations. And I wonder if you were to measure halfway between 362nd and Orient, I think you would have a very different story.
It's my belief that I don't think I would, if I chose to put a camera down there now, I don't think I would choose Highway 26 and 362 because we're not seeing the speed violations. I think you're right. And
Mhm.
based on what we see, Orient and Highway 26 are going to be very similar to what we see coming into 10.
Yeah.
Because it's the same approach. It's, hey, we're going from a 55 to a 40, and then it's going to slow
Well,
down.
I get
eventually to
blown
25.
away when I try to do 45 through there. I mean,
Yeah.
people honk and flash their lights and everything else.
I know currently OSP's favorite spot to sit on this side. The two troopers that work up here mostly during the day, they love sitting down here in the early morning. And they get people leaving town
Yeah.
at a high rate of speed.
That green light at 362nd is like, go.
Yes. Yes.
I think though, what, we also need to be mindful of is, as I said, if we, I don't know if you're familiar with 362nd on the north side, but there's, we put in $15 million road, sewer, all this other stuff to prime it for development.
Oh, okay.
And so that's, we're kind of under a development moratorium, but we're looking at options and things like that. And so if that does develop, that's going to be commercial and things like that. And so that could be a really, it's just going to add to the existing busyness of it. But what's concerning is that, you've got that 45 mile an hour coming into that intersection. And it is interesting. I mean, if you're only looking at 11 over, it is kind of shocking that there's not more folks.
I don't know if that's because that light holds longer for traffic because there isn't as much north-south crossing there. So you have a lot more. What I noticed when I was out there, honestly, when I was at Bluff and Tenike, it was scary. It was actually scary to be
I
out
live
there.
on Bluff, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And I thought I would be more afraid on 362nd because it's wide.
Yeah, 6 lanes.
But I
yeah.
think for one thing, there's the distance advantage. You can see that light changing, it's time to slow down.
It's uphill too.
Are you saying Highway 26 in Tenike?
Yeah, always.
That's what you meant.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, but I agree with Chief that the 26 and 362nd this time, I don't think is I would look at other locations. The other two just so stood out as far as the sheer volume. And I know that, there's some conversation around, well, these are really limited application. They'll jump on the brakes, they'll slow down just for that, and then they'll blast off. And that's true. You're not going to control speed with these on the entirety of the roadway, but where you want to slow it down is where pedestrians and where you have vulnerable road users. And they're highly effective in those areas. So, when you start getting east of, say, Tenike, and they hit the gas pedal, and they just take off. Okay, well, that's if you risk hitting a deer, right? But that you don't risk hitting a pedestrian. And there's that congested area when you come into town is, from my perspective, I saw people playing Frogger. It was quite scary.
Yeah.
So, and that was one of the more. It just is so dense right there, and it's tight, and there's limited visibility. So I don't know how you cure that in any other way, but these were quite high, and I do see there's a dramatic drop from 40 down to 25. So those speed signs the radar speed display signs will be useful for that. You'll never get it down to 0. I mean, we have had systems in Beaverton and in Portland, and you just don't have. You don't have enough, you won't have Sandy residents getting the violations because you'll have 30 days of warnings, 45 days of warnings that go out prior to these issuing actual violations. And one of the reports that I like to do for cities when we start these programs is the zip code report that you were talking about. And that shows exactly where these drivers are coming from. It's anonymized data from every other perspective, but zip code, like where are they Portland people? Are they Washington people? Well, one thing that remains true is that it's rarely Sandy people. It'll be rarely your residents here. They're the ones walking dogs and kids and trying to get around. So
you're saying, Heidi, that you're recommending Tenike and Bluff And then what I'm hearing you say, you guys are saying that maybe Orient, Jarl is a better option than 362nd? Is that what I'm hearing?
I believe so. I believe you're gonna have very similar results at Highway 26 and Orient that we're seeing at Tenike and Highway
Uh-huh.
26.
Absolutely.
It's the same thing. There's more visibility, so maybe we see, like she's talking, some reduced numbers there. But Tenike for sure, we've been lucky as a city. The
Is it safe to say
things
we can't put enough cops out on the street to make a difference there?
we can't. If I've only got 2 officers on at a time and they're both tied up on a domestic call, we can't work traffic.
Right.
Right? And we're all getting out there when we can to do that. It's just, we can't address the number of violations that we're seeing in this short study. The radar trailer that we have, we've also put out for 8 days in a row at different locations. We've seen some egregious speeds with that radar trailer at different locations around our city. We have our own study here that we did over a year ago that showed very similar results to what these guys did in their short study.
Chief, can you, just because we're talking about human power versus technology for a second, can you talk about, in a perfect world, how many citations you could issue in any given hour? Absent of any other calls that you're taking, you just got one car
3
doing
an hour.
traffic.
Three an hour is what we call turning and burning. If you're hitting somebody on
Call it-
radar, turning and burning. If
Oh,
you're hitting
God,
somebody
you
on
guys are
radar, and I've worked numerous saturations up here on the mountain, whether it was OSP or Sandy Police Department, where that's all we're doing. And there are certain sections of Highway 26, and this is one here we have from Tenike to Shorty's Corner. There's another one from 212, Highway 212 all the way to Orient, that you can sit all day long, any day of the week, and get somebody at 80 miles an hour and at 55.
How long do you have to wait for that?
Not long, not long. So you can sit there it takes about 15 to 20 minutes to write that citation. So if you're identifying the speeder, you're catching up to them, you're stopping them. So best case scenario is about 3 an hour.
Well, and red light violations are really hard to enforce as a police officer. If you are lucky enough to be close behind that violator and you can follow them through the intersection without endangering cross traffic on that green, then you're lucky. But usually you just see them below the red and you go, oh my God, they made it. And you can't get there, right?
Mhm.
There's just no way to safely catch up to that driver.
Can you kind of explain your red light table? I don't quite understand it. Your
What-
data.
what
Oh,
page are we
yeah,
on
that's a
now?
little bit,
Yeah.
the green one, yeah.
Yeah.
The last page, I think. of sort of
Right,
the staff
so-
report.
Yeah, that's,
Those are red
I
light.
apologize for
Attachment
that
2?
being a little bit more cryptic. So ST is straight through, just straight through. The light turns red. They go and it is dead red. So just so you know, these are never yellow. LT is left turns. So if they just trick that left turn on a red, left turn stop is if they stop, they don't go through the entire intersection, but they're over the stop line or they're in the crosswalk. The problem with that is pedestrians now have to enter the lane of travel to be able to navigate around those vehicles, right? So if they're blocking the sidewalk. ST is straight through. ST stop is straight, but they stopped on the stop line somewhere. Right turn slow is they basically California
stop.
roll through 10 miles an hour or less. Right turn is over 10 miles an hour. So they just didn't even try to slow down.
So is this one day, how many
It's
days?
16 hours.
Not even a full
Just
day.
one 16-hour day?
Yeah, because in this case, we have to have a video segment and count every single, so we're looking at the stop
okay.
line and we're counting every single, and these are kind of industry standards. I'm a little more, I like to do a 5 to 7 day speed study because especially in a place like this where you have, a destination on both sides and people are traversing your city that way. So I want to see what happened on the weekends and the weekdays. Most speed studies are Tuesday through Thursday. But this is industry standard. We usually just see 16 hours because we have to film every single violation. And the problem, I'm always an advocate for right-hand turn enforcement. Not all jurisdictions do it, but I'm a huge advocate because drivers are looking left and the crosswalk is a go for pets and kids on scooters and kids doing this on their phone. And, you know, that's the perfect recipe for a disaster.
Someone's gonna die soon, if they haven't already, is exactly.
There's a-
Highway 212 and 26, not on the study right now, but it's a blind area that's hard to see cars coming. And people run that all the time, big commercial trucks run that
Highway.
regularly, which,
We have had fatals there.
okay. And that, I would love to see that one from a red light perspective.
But you're talking 211 or 212?
Sorry, I
211.
misspoke,
Okay, you-
211
yeah.
and 26.
Because you have
Oh,
a
right
grade,
there.
you have a
Because you're coming
approach.
up and then you got the ace, and
So
you got- so you got
that
limited
right
sight
Right
lines.
here next to the intersection.
Okay.
Right there. Yeah.
There,
Yeah.
purple.
My wife, and Bluff's the other one, so you caught that one. That's also
Yeah.
terrible. But, you know, our family is all like, the light turns green, you wait. You just count, wait, make sure, and then go.
We just spoke to a gentleman that lives here in town that approaches from Wolf. And he says he never goes on a green. Exactly. Because he counts to 3 and he lets somebody blow through the intersection, which is, it's right here.
And
You see the
the
data.
part that's irritating me is more often than not, it's a commercial truck driver. It's like,
It's really gonna do
they
some
should know
damage.
better.
And luckily, in Oregon, you're required to capture the front plate and driver photo. In my state of Washington, we take photos by the rear. We're prohibited from taking photos of the driver. It's a civil violation, and so trailers are worthless. They could be registered to Arkansas and have nothing to do with the tractor rig. So we're able to do the commercial enforcement. In fact, I could look at your data and see how many big rigs blew the light on your red light. And the speeding, I can take a look. We have that device also has a crude classifier.
Yes.
Speaking of big rigs and not being able to identify, what about we get a lot of rental cars
Oh, yeah.
and how does rental car?
So that's just a part of the court's process. What we do is send out a letter. It's a letter of violation. It's not an infraction, and it goes to Hertz Rental or Enterprise or whomever, you know, Bob's Car Rentals. And then they either have an agreement with the drivers when they rent that car that they'll pay and then bill you and put it on your credit card, or they nominate that driver and then that comes back to the police department and then they re-review it and then issue it. So and there's limited timelines when those can happen. So we have to comply with state 5-10 days turnaround, and when we send all violations first class. I've testified in Beaverton's courts on both the signage and the first class mail to make sure that we're compliant with the state's requirements for mailings.
In the same vein as the rental car, is that the same for like a electric company truck? You know, that's owned by a business, but an employee is driving it. Is
It's
that
not the same.
It's not the same. Can you
No,
talk
it's
about
not the
that?
same because that has a unique, rental cars have a unique, their unique situation, whereas a business usually assigns the vehicles and they're responsible, that driver. So when a violation comes through to say, I don't know, Amazon or a city-owned vehicle, then they look to see who that vehicle was assigned to and then go and then deal.
Council Sheldon has a question.
Oh,
Thank you. I have a couple questions. Sorry, my voice isn't very good tonight. The questions I have is, so I know you said commercial truck enforcement is doable. How does that work? How does it work when the semi that's not, it's registered to Joe Schmo Inc. How does that driver get the ticket?
so many of the commercial rigs are owned by individuals, right? So their business is their job, and so they are the registered owner of that vehicle. They have a company name, but there's a registered owner associated with that. Otherwise, it goes to the company. And the company then sends it back as the nominated driver.
How often does that happen? Let me rephrase my question. What teeth do we have to make the company give us the name of the driver?
Well, I don't know the answer to that.
What about people that have
Any
that because correct me if I'm wrong, but the way it works is it takes a picture of the driver and then also the license plate, and then a DMV check is ran, and the picture of the driver is compared to the driver's license pictures compared to the driver. So what about, people that go and register their car to their significant others, or they're driving a friend's car? Or what about all these cars that we have running around here with no license plates or temporaries? How do those get caught?
anytime that it doesn't matter if the plate is currently registered. If it's sold or stolen, that's when we would address the courts address those specific issues. But if it's a driver that is not a registered owner of the vehicle, there's nothing that we can do about it. There's a percentage of these violations that just that go unaddressed. That's a fact. People ignore them. Even if they go to collections or they for whatever reason, there's a non-response. There is a percentage of that, less so in Oregon because your state is really very strict about driver photos and we're able to identify, but there are, there's a decent percentage, I would say 5 to 7%, where you just.
So only the registered drivers for that vehicle will be able to effectively get a ticket. Is that what, because if I
Well,
give
we go off the plate, right? So the
right,
system.
but if I give my daughter the car, let her drive the car, she's not a registered owner, she's
Right.
not on the registration. If I let her drive the car, she's under her own insurance and she triggers the enforcement camera.
You'll get it.
I'll get it.
You'll get it. It comes to you because you're the registered owner.
Even
You'll
though
say,
I'm not in the picture, the
right,
driver doesn't have gray hair.
right. But they won't, yeah, exactly. They'll compare the photos and they'll say, that might be a driver mismatch, or you'll say, or you may be compelled to nominate your daughter as that was the driver who was the
Maybe
driver.
can't
Who's in care and custody of your vehicle at the
What-
time of the
yeah, I
violation.
mean, I may be, what if I just ignore it because it's not me?
Exactly, that's part of that
Do we send,
percentage.
do we send the mayor to collections in that case?
So I can tell you that we've asked these questions. So we've used Beaverton Police Department as an example. We've used them for a lot of questions. They've been- Beaverton
Uh-huh.
Police Department. So your traffic agents, if you will, are going to be at your PD, right? Are going to be using this equipment, right? This video. They're going to go down that checklist. They're going to look at everything about that violation. Is it a driver match? Is it a driver's license match? If that traffic agent cannot prove that violation occurred with that person, then we can choose not to issue that violation. And we can not waste our time. So,
Gotcha.
and on like in your circumstance, let's say we know it's your car. Oh, we happen to know that the mayor loaned her car to her daughter that week. We could go figure that out in the DMV system, find that photo and go, that's the mayor's daughter. Here's your ticket.
You don't go looking at facial recognition of other.
No,
Oregon
it's just,
drivers.
it would just be a DMV photo. And you're more likely than not taking the easy ones. If it's too hard to prove, then we're gonna move on. Because we're gonna have thousands of violations to review in a week. So depending on how many traffic agents you have under your employment, they can only process so many.
And there's very
I want to add one more thing, please, which is kind of one of my issues with this program. To your point, the state of Washington they only take a picture of the rear of the vehicle because they treat it like a parking ticket. So there's not the downstream effects of the citation, i.e. increase in insurance and all that. My issue with this is like we have there's a lot of speaking about making sure things are done equally and fairly. Yet this will only punish those that are the people that are doing the right thing. The people that aren't registering their cars, the people that are not registering them properly, or who don't have license plates on their car. It's not gonna punish those individuals. But it will punish the mom that, as you said, was yelling at their kid and was making an honest mistake. It will absolutely hold her accountable. And I don't feel that that's right. Also, the thing about this is when you look at some of these speeds, I mean, this isn't going to catch an impaired driver. This isn't going to catch those actual dangerous behaviors. In fact, it will allow it to just keep going down the road and they won't even know about it till 10 days down the road. So I have extreme issues with that. I'm all for speed enforcement. I think it's super important. I understand the nexus behind it, but I feel like we haven't even tried, any of the other programs to see if it needs there. The last question I have is you said that there's or the staff report, it talks about an ALPR component. And so with all the legislation that's going through with like ICE and all of that such, is there any consideration to that? And what that would mean later down the road for us?
Can you explain what that acronym was, Rich?
Yeah, ALPR, automated license plate reader.
Thank you.
There's current legislation now in the short session that addresses that. So without knowing what that legislation comes to, we wouldn't know if we can utilize that or not. We have to wait for those legislative fixes or whatever to come out. It's just simply part of the technology that exists with this programming that we can utilize for criminal investigation.
We don't share any data. Unlike Flock that you're talking about, where that platform is designed to be a shared law enforcement platform so that regionally, if a stolen car starts to enter a city from Portland or Gresham and it comes through here, you get the alert and you can respond however you want, or if it's a silver alert or an amber alert, whatever. This system is locked down. It's the opposite. Our systems contain personal identifying information. It's not designed to be shared. We don't share. It's your information and it's locked down to this city. If we get a court order or a public records request that comes through the city and we're compelled to share a record that does not violate the privacy laws, then yeah, if somebody makes a request, how many vehicles received a violation during the month of October going eastbound? Okay, we'll provide that. But we're never going to release information to anyone around who the driver registered owners are.
In this case.
I mean, I do want to be clear that the license plate reader technology is referenced in the staff report as
other technology that could be considered. It's not a recommendation or part of the proposal that we're bringing forward for discussion this evening. So it's certainly an option that we could add at some point in time, but that wasn't part of the scope of like, and here's an offering of what we could be doing, add it now.
Can I ask Councilor Sheldon a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Going back to that, punishing that mom who's not paying attention. If she runs a red light, shouldn't she get fined?
Absolutely, but so shouldn't the person that's not doing the right thing, the suspended driver, the person whose car isn't registered to them because they know they don't have a driver's license? I would ask you, who's the more dangerous one on the road long term?
I don't disagree, but we also heard earlier that we have the situation of unless I'm right behind him and I can safely get through the intersection in time, that guy's gone. Whereas with this technology, we still, a reasonable percentage, we could issue a citation.
Can I ask a clarifying question? I guess what's the appetite of this board? Is the appetite of this board to use this as a punitive process to catch people running red lights and stop that behavior, or is it to make money?
For me personally, it's better behavior. I mean, that's what I've been about all along.
If you look at the proportion of red light violations to your speeding violations, it's considerable. And if you consider the fact that you have to be traveling 11 miles an hour over through that intersection at the time. I mean, that's pretty high. I don't know if you routinely go that fast through intersections. I might go 8 or 9, but I never go over 10. And, so, the threshold is set high like that so that there is some grace in there. And the programs start out with a 30-day warning or 45 days of warnings to let drivers be aware. And not only that, there's no surprise here. We're not trying to trick drivers. There's signage, there's the radar speed display signs to slow folks down. Is any system perfect? No, there's holes in every net. We're never gonna catch every dope dealer, every thief, every car prowler, every speeder. We just can't. There's nothing that's that perfect. But it does promote safety because traffic stops for officers are one of the most volatile and dangerous stops and interactions with the public that we can do. And it oftentimes can become a deadly scenario. This is such a safe way to seek compliance overall. And you might have a guy in the pack who's 20 back, who isn't registered, and he's got this car and he never registered with the state, but the whole pack is slowed down because the pack is trying to be compliant. So there are some halo effects here that are really beneficial.
Can I ask, go ahead.
Well, I just had a question about some of the data. What are the data you have? Not the stuff you've already given us, but just in the results in Beaverton or the results in some of these other cities.
We see a 90% drop in, a 90% increase in compliance.
But part of that has to do like Beaverton where they have it. It's kind of the traffic patterns where they have it are kind of the daily drivers and all that. Whereas
you might be not, so what we see nationwide is that when we roll out a program, the study numbers are always incredibly high because you have a problem, right? So then you implement it, the warning period occurs, it's on your website, it might be in the news, there's signage, you might have received a warning, and all of those things together, and there's signage as you enter the city that might say Sandy, photo enforced city, so that drivers are well aware, and it creates this whole traffic safety mindset for the city or a position, that this Highway 26 is going to be like a traffic safety corridor. And so we see a huge drop, 70% in the first couple months.
Nationwide-ish.
Yes, nationwide.
Sure.
And then it drops even further. When we took over the program in Beaverton, we actually their equipment wasn't as effective, so we had an increase in violations. Same with Portland.
But where I guess I'm just kind of wondering, I would expect that because we have so many unique drivers, people going over to Bend who, all that stuff,
You might see big flex in the summer
I mean,
versus
Yeah, I
winter
mean,
and,
the daily drivers, people going to work and stuff are gonna figure it out real
Yeah.
fast.
yes.
Most of those people either live in Sandy or live on the mountain or whatever, and they're
Yeah.
just commuting, they'll figure it out. But all the unique drivers that are only, coming from out of state or out of wherever. And my question, go ahead, do you mind with my question was, okay, so you got this, deadbeat guy who's always, going way over the speed limit through town every morning. He's not registered driver. He's, driving we see this on Facebook, the guy in the black, Honda Ridgeline truck or whatever. And so you see that, and then you determine that that's not a registered driver or something like that, but you see like several of those over the course of a certain period. Is that something where you can are you able to kind of trace that person down? And
Well,
use-
I can tell you what I would do with that information.
Mhm.
I would put a traffic officer at
Right,
that location.
At
If
that-
you know they're coming through at the same time every day,
right.
then you witness it yourself and you take care of the issue.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was kind of getting at as far as trying to track down some of the, and it's not going to take care of every, deadbeat person that doesn't have an, registration or whatever, but.
Not the
at least-
one-offs, but it might help the repeat offenders.
Um,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Is there any thought on so if we're doing this on 26, we're gonna have a whole lot of people going down Pleasant Street, right, to offset What do we do about that situation? Chief Husky.
I don't honestly see that scenario happening. The people that are violating your speed and red light running are trying to get to the mountain as quick as possible. They're not gonna take a side street. They're just gonna punch
You,
through.
you gotta come sit on my front porch. Can
Well,
you-
I have.
it's-
Well, I haven't sat in front of
Right.
it, but I have worked that strip.
Right.
That, yes, there are, I don't know that. My guess is it would be local people trying to skirt the traffic. We can educate those folks.
And get to Dutch Bros.
Most people
So you
can
don't have to
avoid
go
an
in.
intersection so much, you know, if there was a speed camera in a section, they might try to, you know, circumvent that section of the highway, but when they think it's just an intersection, it's a lot of trouble to go around an intersection, but we could do a speed study, you know, secondary speed study once the system's on, just see what does the deferred traffic pattern look like, and especially some of these future locations where, you know, these have, like I said, a halo effect, and people are compliant beyond where the systems are deployed. So we could see, you know, what it looks like at some of these other locations once one pair of systems is in place.
I'd say too that, you know, maybe the next step would be speed humps or something along Pleasant if that was the traffic pattern was shifting. I think so. We have some other tools in our tool belt to address that if the volume of traffic warranted. But I think in this specific scenario, if you're turning in lieu of speeding through downtown, you turn on Tenite to turn on Pleasant to turn on Bluff to turn back on the highway, you're still going through two of those intersections just in a different direction. So you're not avoiding.
You're not avoiding, but you blow through those stop signs. It just happens.
Yeah.
I mean, we sit out there every
Oh
time,
yeah,
and
I'm
it
not
just happens.
discrediting.
Between those stop signs, it's, let's see how fast we can go, you know, between the stop signs, because it's fun.
Counselor Mayton or Counselor Sheldon, do you have some additional comments or questions?
I have a couple more questions. So wouldn't that be combined as soon as DeMarco punches all the way through? Wouldn't that, to Lindy's point, be similar? So I just want that on our mind. And then also, how much money do we anticipate making off of this?
Can I expand on that? I would like to understand the whole financials, not just the money aspect, but staffing. You know, it sounds like there's new FTE as well. So if we could expand on what Jack is asking, I'd love to go there.
Yeah, so let me I'll let you jump in here in just a second, Tyler. I want to make one point quickly. We, you know, purposefully structured the staff report to be focused on safety, right? And so that was the predominant foundation of the staff report. We'll answer the questions that were just asked, but I just wanted to frame that you know, those dollars were left out. Potential revenue was left out intentionally because we don't have a crystal ball to know exactly what will be generated. I had another point that just totally escaped my mind. So why don't you go ahead and answer?
Sure. In terms of a revenue projection, I mean, as you can see from the different studies that were provided, you know, if each violator that was a violator in those studies received a citation, that would be a lot of citation revenue. You know, as was pointed out, you know, quickly what happens with a program like this is drivers' behavior correct. You know, they learn that there's you know, enforcement in Sandy, and they correct that behavior, which is a good thing. We want them to correct that behavior. Even with, you know, 90% of people behavior correcting, it's still a lot of revenue. And talking to the city of Beaverton and talking to, you know, kind of extrapolating out, you know, how many cameras and how many intersections that they're employing, and kind of, you know, comparing those to our figures, you know, the best kind of, again, crystal ball guess that we can put out there is maybe $2 to $3 million. Again, there's a lot of variables, and so I'd heavily caveat that number. As was, you know, discussed earlier, our stretch of highway in our city is very unique, and so it's hard to find, you know, other cities that have had, you know, traffic programs that have, you know, examples just like ours, where you have so many people blowing in and out of town, and so we might not see that 90%, you know, figure. It might be something like 70 or 80%, and then that means you have more violators, and it means you have more revenue. And so
Newburgh would have been a good comparable before the bypass.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, if I can add
Sure, go
one thing. Beaverton tells us that they issue about 2,500 citations a month. And so they're seeing somewhere between $2 and $3 million a year in citation revenue from their program. And Sherwood, from the research I was able to dig up, is somewhere in the $1.5 million range.
And I know we have a lot of people going through this town. I mean, I get that, but I gotta think Beaverton's got a lot more. So their percentages, I would think.
I mean, there's some considerations. It sounds like big numbers. Beaverton has 5 full-time people, 4 or 5 people reviewing violations. It's a lot of staff, and they have a bigger court. There's a natural regulator here, which will be your capacity in the city to handle the volumes. I'm telling you now, you'll not be able to handle the volumes. So your courts, you know, I don't know how big your court is, but whatever they're seeing now will blow their socks off. And so you don't want to inundate your courts faster than you can staff and keep up. You're sending out legal notices, and they have an obligation to, you know, provide hearings if one is requested, to review certificates of innocence. And so there's a process that we need to be really mindful of way before you start looking at revenue. It will be self-sustaining, but you know, you're gonna have officer time or the staff to review public works to make sure that your signage for the King's motions are in place every year. You're gonna have to do search. I mean, there's website development. There are things that are not just, we're not talking about right now because we're talking about speed and safety and compliance and trying to, you know, educate driver and get compliance. But I just caution council to not look and see dollar signs going. There are so many unknowns.
Yes, thank you.
So many costs.
Thank you. I guess and thank you very much for that information. I mean, I almost wonder if you almost can't make a decision tonight.
Oh, you
need to
can't.
do a lot more research into
No,
this
that's-
and, you know,
Yeah, that's
this
where I was
sounds a
gonna
lot like there's a lot of things before this course.
Well, that's where I was gonna go to. In order to make a decision, obviously with this just a working session, I would want to understand better whether that's self-sustaining means revenue neutral, revenue positive. I'd like to understand what the upfront investment it would require. Do we have to purchase? Do we lease? What investment do we have to make in people? Are we talking 1, 2, 3, 5 FTE? How does
You
that
know,
all
hiring 3
pencil
more
out?
judges.
And yeah, and then to the latter part,
Yeah.
I think I'd love to see, we're going to have to see all of that information at least as at an initial, almost budgetary and associated framework for us to really get the decision. But for myself, I'm very much interested in this just because of the safety. I love the idea of 50% better compliance. To me, says we should look at this.
I think you will be very revenue positive, but I've just seen other councils in the past start spending the money before there's a camera in the ground, right? They're already allocating, and so just based on your numbers alone, you will be cash positive without a doubt and have excess for other projects. I had a really important thing I wanted to tell you about that. And I think that judiciously installing these over time allows the city to be able to accommodate, you know, the volume.
Up as opposed to normal.
Yeah, I mean, the whole goal here, we don't want to blister your city with cameras. That is not the goal. It is just to get drivers to calm down speeds as they enter this really dense part of Sandy, right? But I have no concerns, honestly, about it. I just have seen other councils start spending the money in advance. So, yeah.
What's shocking to me is to see, you know, you gave us 6 days of data. And this was the, which intersection, the Bluff Road intersection. In those 6 days, just the category, the 36 to 44 is 29,500 violations. And you're saying that Beaverton or something gives out 2,500?
I didn't.
Yeah.
Provide that.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Beaverton issues about 2,500 a month. Now, keep in mind, the data in this report is raw data that does not have any sort of driver correction factored in, right? So if we see a 90% compliance rate right off the bat,
And Beaverton
fantastic.
has many
Like-
systems, yeah, they have
Yeah.
many systems.
I doubt we will, but just
Yeah.
because so much of it is new traffic and not regulars, but.
I would say just keep in mind two points. The first, to your earlier question, Counselor Hokinson, Novo Global doesn't charge anything up front.
Right. Oh, that's what I
They
was gonna
install, do you want to
say,
go
yeah.
ahead and take that?
Yeah, so the cost of the equipment and the permitting and the installation, so we own and maintain and operate all of the equipment. And we issue the violations based off the officer's determination. And we mail out the violations. All of those things are part of the program cost, which is a piece of the violation. And that's determined by whatever contract that you decide to piggyback or whatever however you want to do that. And there's a portion that goes to the county and a portion that goes to the state of every violation. And for the city, there is no construction expenditure. You're not buying anything. You're not paying anything for the program to start. But where you will pay is for the time to review, officer time.
BFT.
Yep. And you can start off with, this program allows for, this isn't like real time. So if you have officers that want to review this and do 4 hours of overtime or do, some off duty, so it doesn't impact the two guys that are out there. But, it's something that the chief can decide how he wants to structure the review time for these violations. And then, so there's that personnel cost to review and then the court costs, whatever you have a court, you're lucky you're not contracting services, which can really inflate the price of, your cost to adjudicate your tickets. So, and your website. And if you decide to do any public awareness campaigns through radio or whatever else, but those, your website development, your officer time and your court time, those are the things that you will be paying for. But the idea is that those items are all paid for out of revenue from violator revenue. In fact, I believe in the contract, it even says that you are not allowed to pay for any of those services from anything other than violator revenue.
I think what we would want to do and we've discussed doing is, there's an initial staff up period. And so we, in talking to other jurisdictions and kind of extrapolate out the amount of citations that we anticipate issuing, staffing up within the PD, staffing up within the court department, getting additional judge hours, resources there. And then the important thing to remember is, we have the ability to take a little bit of a wait and see approach in that we control the throttle on how many citations we want to issue. And so, yes, they're mailing them out for us, but we're the ones within the PD deciding how many, what we want our thresholds to be, in miles per hour over the speed limit. Which citations we want to issue. So we have our finger on the throttle there.
On that point, can you kind of, like, if you ended up with 30,000 violations that were 11 miles or over, I'd be getting all the red light camera ones. But anyway, for the speed limit, can you kind of just say, well, we're only going to deal with the ones that were 15 or over or 20 over? Is that a kind of just a spreadsheet, filter just the top this, or do you have to go out and reset the cameras, or how does that work?
So we have an algorithm that we can deploy within the software that, yes, we are, and it's really helpful for us because we capture every single violation during that warning period. So we know, if how many thousands of violations or warnings were sent out. So we have a really good snapshot. Plus we have this, but, after the awareness and the signage is out, that number is going to be lower. So we have a really good idea what people are traveling, what the speed bins of travelers through this intersection. And we can set parameters before the officer even sees it. And if we say, we're seeing 15,000 violations in a month. And chief says, okay, right now at Sandy, we can only handle 1,500. So we would set that algorithm to only push through violations that were 25 miles an hour over the speed limit or higher. So you're getting your most egregious violators, and that is a real-time adjustment that we can do. And we can also, it can also flow down as your top end speeds, because we've done this in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where people were going 140, they were racing, big wide open roads, car culture, 140 miles an hour. And we saw speeds quickly plummet just based on that strategy of, taking care of the high end violators. And then that 1500 first, they were all, 30 and 45 mile an hour or greater over the speed limit. And then a month later, it might've been 5 miles lower than that, and then 5 miles lower, so that we just adjust it down. It's really useful. And then they're not wasting their time just going, wait, is this 145 over, or what are we doing again? So they're only seeing what they set the criteria, you set the criteria.
I think initial program budgets would include, those kind of that first best guess in terms of FTE, and then they would include a contingency to be able to stop further if that's what we needed to do to be able to handle the volume of tickets that, we needed to be able to issue.
Yeah, it'd be helpful to kind of understand, like you said, you do 3 tickets an hour or whatever, but to be able to kind of know for every, you need 1 FTE per every so many tickets.
Yeah, the 3 tickets an hour, that's in person issuing citations, and I
We can
think
do
that,
But under this.
About 3 a minute
yeah.
for officer. Now, just remember that stuff flows downhill to the courts. Court has to touch all of them. So they'll be long done, and your poor court clerk will be inundated,
Well,
but
people can
Court
mail it
clerks.
in, right?
Clerks.
They can
They
mail it
can-
in, right?
they can pay online, they can mail it in. There's a lot of, we have as automated as your court wants to be, we can help them with that.
We already do front counter, Dropbox, mail,
Pay
online
online.
or by phone. So there's not really another way
Yeah.
that I'm aware of currently that you could pay your citation.
I think that's
That's
my-
online,
When
right?
they-
That's digitally.
When they
No,
get
we
a
don't have like
violation in the
Cash
mail,
App or Venmo or
there's
like
2
any of
photos.
those things.
Well, there's 3 photos. There's the vehicle before the stop bar, if it's a red light, right? Before the stop bar, in the intersection, you can see red light, and then a photo of the driver. And there's a QR code on there, so if you have a smartphone, you can QR code it. Now, my 87-year-old dad cannot QR code anything, including a menu, so he would probably call, or, so there's a lot of ways that you can handle that, but we try to make it as easy as possible.
Just one other thing, you had mentioned that, the state of Washington, it's a civil violation to take a photo. Is there any indication that legislation like that may be coming to Oregon?
No,
They just recently passed the law that gave us the law we have now.
my gosh, if you put in, because you're gonna have to permit and request through ODOT to be able to put these on Highway 26. So if you start now.
Maybe
20,
in
30
3 years, maybe in
and
3
by
years.
2030, you might have some speeds. I don't know. But I'm
Sure.
just saying, it is a process that the city has to go through to request.
Yeah,
Just like
'cause
your
it's state
other
highway.
things, it's gonna be a while.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to,
Start the process.
Right.
start it
Yeah.
because you've got
But I mean,
ages.
my question is them just kind of a thumbs up, thumbs down, and then we kind of tweak it along? We don't have to take every tweak we want to do to them, do we?
Based on what the city of Beaverton has kind of dealt with and dealing with currently, my advice would be to get approval from you guys to move forward on figuring this out. I would make a request for the 3 intersections that I believe we should look at, get those approvals, and then we phase in and implement as we see fit, as we can handle. But if you do, City of Beaverton right now is trying to add a camera, and they have been fighting tooth and nail to get those approvals, just like we were talking about earlier, about how long it takes to get those approvals. So my idea would be to ask now for everything that we may want, get that approval, and then the good thing about their systems is if we see that a camera system is not working at a specific location, it's not giving us the violations that we need to see to continue that, we can look at a different intersection, get the approval for that intersection, and move those around, or just eliminate it all together and say, we don't need this camera, we're just gonna stick with this one and this one.
And just because you'd have a contract with, I have had a contract in New Mexico for a year, but their council, they had some problems with, some theft and some things in their government, so they had to postpone it. Just because you have a contract doesn't mean you owe. You only owe when we start paying. When the first paid violation comes in, that's when you pay us. If it never comes in, it never happens. So don't be afraid that you're gonna get locked into something and be stuck. You're not stuck. We don't do it like that.
Yeah, so a couple quick points. The way that the city of Beaverton, and Josh, maybe you can clarify if I misstate this, the way that the city of Beaverton had set up their RFP process for photo radar and traffic cameras met sort of, I guess, state contracting laws. And so we're able to piggyback off of that contract if we wanted to go directly with this vendor. We reached out to Novoa Global, or Chief reached out to Novoa Global because you had relationships in Beaverton. You knew they were going through this process. So we have the potential to streamline a contracting process and just kind of tag on to what Beaverton did, and negotiate a contract substantially similar to Beaverton to
So
sort of.
does that mean we don't have to go through ODOT
We
and
would
wait?
No, we still have to go through. This is just the contracting side.
Okay.
We still have to go through ODOT and do all of that headache.
Even though we've done the study,
You just wouldn't have to go to RFP.
We just wouldn't have to go. We wouldn't have to
Right.
draft an
I
RFP,
guess my
publish
question
it.
is, okay, we've done a study. Does ODOT gonna make us do more studies? I mean, I don't quite understand why
They're.
it would take them years to figure this out. Well, I know that.
They might
like-
do a
Yeah.
study,
You answered
they
your
might
own
do an
question.
independent
Yeah.
study, but they're also gonna ask us, you, about the right of way, about signage, because this is not just a single point, it's before, each intersection with signage and things, so you got me, ODOT is.
Yeah, I think if I may, this is not a decision-making question. I'll be very clear about that, but I'm hearing a majority of interest in continuing to explore this
I'm
option.
in favor of that, yes.
I'd like to
So,
hear from our Counselor Mayton and.
yeah, I'll shut up and,
Can you give us an indication of where you're at, Counselor Sheldon, Counselor Mayton, please?
I'll tell you where I'm at. I'm at for exploring it more. I think there's a whole business side. I understand we don't need to spend the money more. I'd also like to hear, well, I'll just leave it at that. So I'm not for moving forward in any permitting process or contracts or anything of the sort, but I am for the exploratory phase more.
Thank you. Counselor Mayton?
And I'll add, before I wrote down 9 things that I wanted before I could say yes to adding cameras. And I won't go through that entire list with you now, but I will say after listening to everyone, I would have my concerns about equity and fairness as well, but I do think the overall picture of cameras is to reduce crash and improve safety. And I think that will definitely do it. The other thing I would make note of is just based on the numbers that they shared with us on their survey, they said if we did 2 cameras, it'd be 10,932 infractions a day. And let's just say we had driver improvement, we'd drop that 90%, it'd be still 1,000 a day you'd have. Chief said they're doing 3 an hour. Take that 2 intersections at 3 an hour, that's 6 an hour. 24 hours a day, that's like what, 144? Man, that's like 1% of capacity. We would have to definitely increase our FTEs and take a lot of time. So I am for it. I just want to see more of it. But some of the things I wrote down, and I'll just share it here, is I would want very clear goals and success metrics. Like we're going to be reducing the speeding by what and crash and injuries by what in a 6 or 12-month pilot. I'd want to know a lot about the privacy protections, about data retention and restrict access and avoiding facial recognition, just for privatization of that. And then, you said some things already about prominent signage. We talked about equity and fairness, transparent operations and accountability, who's doing the audits, the quarterly and public reports. I think I heard the speaker say that they took care of all that equipment as well. And then prior to any implementation, definitely having the revenue and rules set up because I don't want that to be an afterthought. I don't want our constituents to think this is about the money. This is about safety, so we should have those parameters clearly placed. I kind of like the thing Rich talked about with Washington being more like parking tickets than infraction, but I'm not a legal jargon guy, so I don't know that stuff. But and then definitely our ability to make sure we notice the public before we do this and give plenty of time for it. But it sounds like with the ODOT timeline, we would have lots of time. So I know I'm bouncing all over the place, but basically I would say I do like the idea, but you have to push me on some of the data analytics to give a solid yes.
Can I ask one more question? I'm sorry. The crash data, what are we using any crash data to come up with these intersections? And if so, is it angular crashes or are we talking rear end crashes being factored into them too? Because there are studies that show that these increase crashes in rear end data. I'm sorry, rear end crashes.
I think if you have the radar speed display signs that tell folks in advance, that will reduce that number, but he is right. There is a slight increase in rear end versus T-boning accidents, because people panic.
Yeah, and I looked at crash data, and you guys can look yourself. I provided a link to the city recorder. You can go ahead and play with the filter. It's ODOT's website. You can look at the crash data going back a few years. It's current to 2023. But you can see, you can filter it out for fatalities. You can filter it out for injuries, serious injuries. If you just look at Highway 26 in Clackamas County, it's a hotspot map, and it's got a crash virtually everywhere on Highway 26. Okay, we have crashes right here, and you can see the red dots coming into town and splitting for both roadways, Proctor and Pioneer. We've had fatals in town. We've had one right out here. We've had two at Bluff in the last 4 years, I think going back to like 2018. I've been on some of these myself over the years. My opinion is this program saves one life, it's worth it. That's just all there is to it. Whether you're a soccer mom obeying all other laws and you kill somebody because you were not paying attention, it does not matter. Because anybody can make a mistake. Anybody can take a life with a 4,000-pound vehicle. And just today, I was sitting at the light. My light turns green to turn left onto 10I. There's a guide dog for the blind trainer and a dog getting ready to cross to 7-Eleven. They went, and I watched a car come through that intersection at 45 miles an hour. The person I stopped was a nice person. But that's not where I make my decision to write a citation, because they almost killed a person. So I don't focus on equity when it comes to making a decision on enforcement. You did it. You need to pay attention. Now,
I 100% agree, except I will push back on this. Suspended drivers and bad drivers and people that have egregious driving records, typically their cars are not registered to them, and we will not hold them accountable with this. That is my issue. I 100% agree with everything else you said, though.
I forwarded the ODOT crash data website that the chief referred to the council.
Thank you. I already said some of the things I'm looking for, but I'm also looking for a counter to Councilor Sheldon's point. And I'm hoping it comes out in, if we implement something like this, what does it free up our officers to do that they're not doing?
Yes.
Chasing down unregistered cars, because it irritates the heck out of me. People driving around with 4-year or 5-year-old expired registrations when I'm paying mine all the time, right? So, I'm looking for some counter, not that it may answer all the questions, but it can't just be about this.
And I can tell you, we do a lot of that enforcement here in town now.
Yeah.
We can't stop everybody. And this allows us to do more with the minimum staffing that we have. I cannot address the education that this system can have.
So that I'm excited about, if that halo effect happens, what you can then accomplish.
I will just throw in there that you can enforce all you want. That doesn't change the collectability of those citations. And many of the people that don't register their vehicle or don't have a valid driver's license or don't carry insurance also don't pay their ticket. So you can stop them all you want to, but it doesn't actually change the behavior from what the court sees on a regular basis.
That's true.
So I just want to playing both sides of the coin there.
Yeah.
It's important to stop those people and try to enforce them, but it doesn't necessarily translate into
You don't necessarily
corrected
get, you don't
behavior.
necessarily get compliance.
Right.
Yeah.
On that point, you all, presumably have some sort of a, when you pull somebody over, you look up their record and everything, but if you're able to, are you able to kind of go to your, I don't know if it's a felon database or whatever, I don't quite know what you call it, but all the,
America's Most Wanted list.
whatever it is. So are you able to kind of compare these folks that we don't have identified that are, that have no license plate and all that to one of your already existing inventories of, and that is kind of that facial ID recognition stuff, but I don't know if it was very egregious one and you can't figure out who it is.
So, I mean, currently, if I make a traffic stop, I run your driver's license, I run your license plate. And your driver's history convictions, that information will come up on the record. So we can always use that as a decision tool as to whether or not you're a repeat offender. Okay, so last week I stopped the driver right here and it was doing 10 over. Okay, 10 over is kind of my threshold where I may warn you, I may cite you depending on what's going on around you. When I looked up that driver's record, they received a speeding citation every year going back as long as that record indicated to me. Okay, that person drives through our town all the time. That person got a ticket.
Yeah.
I can also look at our database, our report beam database, to see what other warnings somebody's been issued. There's information that comes over our CAD system that will show a vehicle that's been stopped before, and you can cross-reference information in the CAD to look up some of that other data.
So you can do, like, this isn't pulling somebody over and talking to them. It's this camera stuff. Are you able to kind of take some of the information that the camera captures, and if they're not registered or they're not, to that car or whatever, you don't know who it is that's driving it. Are you able to kind of do any further? And, we, again, may not have time to do that. This may just be like,
We could do kind of the same thing. We could
Okay.
look in the report beam data. We could, if it's let's say it's a repetitive vehicle, we don't know who's driving it. We can contact our law enforcement partners. Hey, have you had any contact with these people or this car? We could try to do some of that track down. But
Not if you're getting 1,000 of them a month.
but if you're gonna have to set your parameters.
Right.
You're gonna have to deal with what you can deal with.
but if it was like a stolen vehicle, for example.
Oh, we would follow that up as much as we could.
Also, we will help Sandy with every state, including Oregon, requires an annual report, numbers of violations at each site, at each location. And beyond that, there's other reports that are done. The recidivism rate here in these programs is fairly low. Where we see, we can run a report that's 1 through 20, 1 violation to 20 violations, and how many repeats have these people had and where are they from, and then they can do a little deeper dive. It's hard to do when you have this volume, unless they might elect to do a deeper dive on a car that's going 85, because that's extremely dangerous, and maybe try to look at this car a little more. But we have all manner of reports that will help with.
For me, I'd like to kind of know, how many, this especially Newburgh, because I feel like they're a little bit more comparable, I think, if they're doing it on their main highway drag. Not that, I assume they're not doing bypass, because I don't know, maybe they are. Do you know where they're doing it? Is it 18?
99.
99,
yeah.
Yeah. So I'd just be kind of curious, like, how many officers do they have assigned to it? How many violations are they doing? How has that impacted their, what's their court process? Do they have their own judge? How is it impacting that? Kind of, I'd like to hear a little bit from them. I know Beaverton is great, but Newburgh kind of feels like a little bit more similar situation, having a state highway going through the middle of town and a small, you know, it's
Smaller town.
7,000 or something like that, I think it's population. So, yeah. Just so we have an indicator or kind of some of this estimate, like for every, and again, I like the idea that we, you know, we can kind of eat as much of the elephant as we want to take on kind of thing. But, you know, if we decide we're only, you know, we've got 30,000, but we're only gonna, you know, eat 3,000 a month, then we can decide the 3,000 most egregious ones and just eat that. So, I mean, everything's a help to kind of take care. I mean, it's just shocking to me to see how much of a problem we do have. Because it looks like, it just looks really bad, so.
Honestly, it just rings true though, to what we've seen the last few years since COVID.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just gotten bad.
Cool.
All right, well, so we will work on answering some of the questions that were posed, as many of the questions that were posed tonight as we possibly can, and schedule another work session. In the meantime, we'll also work with ODOT to figure out what the full scope of implementation looks like. Should we go that route? I want to make sure we have some timelines and
Yeah.
better estimates on what that process looks like, an outline for the
And
council
how
next
much
time we meet.
details do they need, you know, that we may end up tweaking later, but,
Yeah.
I mean, they're just this.
I imagine
Yeah,
part of it is just as simple as where does the signage go, right? They have to approve every sign that goes along their highway. And so you have to have the sign that says radar photo or speed photo enforce or whatever that language is. So they're going to have to review that and where does it fit between things. And so we'll figure out all of the details on that. Frankly, needed to make sure there was interest to continue exploring before we invested a lot more staff time than we already had on this endeavor. So I appreciate the time this evening to sort of give us some clear direction on the crosswalks and the driver feedback signs and some clear questions and answers that you need on the photo enforcement stuff.
you know, and it
Appreciate
feels so frustrating because it's like, you know, if we were willing to pay a consultant to ODOT, you know, to do what they would otherwise do and take 6 months doing it, and we'll pay for it to get it done in 6 months rather than 3 years. You know, that's the kind of innovative approaches they need to be using for their processes because, you know, it just can't.
Yeah.
They just cannot be that inefficient.
Oh, they can.
Oh, I know they can, but we just have to keep pushing back and say, you know.
They're $1
just push.
billion in the hole for
I
a
know,
reason.
right? Thank
Yeah.
you. Okay, we have executive session.
I know.
Okay, all right, are we done?
That's all I have this evening.
Okay, let's get back.
That's your call.
Oh, I just want to make sure everybody had their questions answered.
Yep.
Okay, let's take off till 8:30 and come back for hopefully a fairly short executive session.
8:25?
8:25?
8:45, sir?
Proposal?
Okay, we can do 6 minutes, 7 minutes, okay.
Need like 45 seconds.
Thanks.